very simple. Send a very powerful message that this is not to stop about being about money, and this has to start being about people, quality of life, and making some necessary improvements, and we've got to do it now.
Obviously working on the issue and trying to thread the needle, but it does still remain federally. Really, this is an onus that should be on the federal government, but you're seeing states take on this initiative. And that is the paradox of the great country we live in, where states have the ability to do things. One could argue that state initiatives lead to changes in federal policy. So which way is the river flowing on the issue is a valid question. But I know you know that regardless of the direction it flows, it should be driven by people and not special interests. So hopefully Washington will come at some point in time and actually either say we're not going that route, it's illegal, or say it's okay, but we'll allow you to do it. But regardless, that happens at the local level for really do something higher, which is again why I remain open-minded on the subject.
One thing too, I started this in 2003 when I was the first time candidate for state representative. When I prepared myself, I thought about all the issues about education, about jobs, about taxes, about the environment, you name it, I thought I was well prepared. And I went to a state dinner in Columbus, and the first question was asked me, what's your position on medical marijuana? And I was standing there like a dork and going, I didn't know. But we've done a lot of research since, and as you probably, some of you know, I introduced legislation while I was in the House. It went nowhere other than the fact that gave more punchlines than Johnny Carson ever said. With hey, you call, how many joint sponsors have you got? Ha ha ha. It was funny to some, it was not funny to most, especially the ones who were counting on us to make a change, make a difference. We had no traction at all. The fact that I can sit up here as a Democrat and sit next to a good friend who happens to be a Republican, I should think speaks volumes for our seriousness about this issue. And again, you know what, we're here to listen, we're taking, you can see from the testimony we received, we're not done yet. And like I said, we got a lot of more work to do, and that's why the request we had for more listening tours. We can't do this. We have to stop it off and cut it off here so we can start doing some really important work of crafting some of this legislation, putting together this information. And it's not just about the people's testimony, it's about previous states who have their legislation already enacted and dealing with all the other interested parties. So there's a lot of work involved in this. It's not going to happen overnight. We have an agenda, and we have a time frame that we have to work within, because this General Assembly will be coming to an end before you know it. There's an election year. There's going to be a lot of time off. We've got to do it. We've got to do it now. So I really appreciate your patience, your help, your understanding, your support, and your prayers. Thank you.
All right. Up next, we'll have Theresa Daniello. Theresa will be followed by Michael Wook and Audrey Weissmack.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for holding this. I really appreciate it. I've been in drug policy reform since 2011. I'm a mother of five, a University of Dayton graduate with a degree in criminal justice. And prior to drug policy, as I said, I've been thrust into drug policy. I was a project manager at refineries and in the automotive industry. In 2009, I was able to reach into my gut and get away from a pill mill doctor. This is after 14 blocks, shots in the muscles around my lungs every 6 weeks, and at the end, 12 Percocets a day, amongst many other drugs. And I'm a very blessed person, so I was able to stay out of the rehab circle, and I was able to follow my intuition to get off of those years of drugs. And the way I did it was with massage, with sweat boxes, with going outside, mindfulness, yoga, breath work, and cannabis. And I have not even thought about going on those pills since. The only time that I thought about it was when I was doing research on Percocet. And I saw a pill on the internet, and I started shaking a little, and I smoked a joint, and that went away. What I was researching was that the FDA advisors advised that Percocet be immediately pulled from the market. And that is the 2009 directive from the FDA advisors. We are still selling Percocet at this point. So when I jumped in 2011, I jumped in as an executive director of a political action committee to get medical cannabis on the ballot. I had no idea what I was doing. I went in and read the Constitution. I went in and read the Ohio Revised Code. And to me, it was very simple. As long as that summary matched that revised code, we got the signatures, we were on. So the group that I was working with, we submitted a comprehensive program, and then we submitted a rights-based program, which was approved by the Ohio Attorney General in 2012. After I attended a accredited CME educational event for physicians and Republican Party campaign manager training, I resigned. I no longer believed our Constitution was the right place to put medical cannabis. And due to, let's just say, activist issues, I chose to go national, and I started working national, and starting attending every event that I possibly could, whether it's an accredited CME event or a business event. I was starting getting pulled into other states to help advise other states, commissioners and task force, and I am very honored to be here today doing the same thing. So thank you very much for that. My expertise is the lack of education for healthcare professionals in the endocannabinoid system. It is absolutely ridiculous and illogical that we have 24 medical cannabis states, and not one state has focused on educating their healthcare professionals in the endocannabinoid system. There are states now that are requiring CMEs in order to make recommendations, but that is not what I'm talking about. The endocannabinoid system and cannabis are two very different issues. It doesn't matter if you live in a cannabis state or not, we all have an endocannabinoid system. This biological system was discovered in 1988 when I was in college, and now I have daughters that have graduated college. And still, I don't believe any school in the state of Ohio, medical school, is teaching about the endocannabinoid system. So first, I'm coming here with an offer that was presented by a national reform. Walter Reed Medical Center recently had an accredited CME event. The organizers have offered to do that also in Ohio. Dr. Daisy Alfred Smith, which I think that you know, Senator Yuko, she works with the Kim Sellers Foundation. She was also the director of the Department of Health for Cleveland, and I think she held statewide offices also. She has offered to come in and help facilitate that accredited CME event. But I have made recommendations across the board. One of the things I didn't let you know also is I was a director of an organization representing 60 families whose children had catastrophic illness, and I resigned a couple of weeks before the election for many reasons, but it was a very difficult thing to do to see 60 families suffering the way that they were suffering. It was horrific to see that. And who was I to stand in the way of them getting medicine if responsible Ohio was. Now, what I did during that time was educate the governor's office, the Ohio Attorney General's office, the auditor's office, and really a lot of the leadership with the Republican Party. I cannot understand why nobody has made a move yet to do something for these suffering children. And I think that's really what we need to focus on and make sure we get something done very quickly. And if you would like, there are opportunities to get potentially to expand the GW pharmaceutical trials to cover 100% unintractable epilepsy patients very quickly. I believe that what you're doing is going to take a little while. It'll be at least a year or so before anybody gets any medicine if we choose to go that way. But that GW pharmaceutical study trial, I believe 10 other states right now have expanded their study trials to include all intractable epilepsy patients. And something really important here also is these families are being targeted by scammers everywhere. There are people calling them, trying to get them to give their children CBD gum. We're talking about 2- and 3-year-olds who are having epilepsy. They're trying to sell them $400 tubes of cannabis oil, and there might not even be any oil in it. We are talking about severely ill children. You saw Christina's daughter,
Yes.
and there should be nobody targeting that little girl and their family to take any of those
There's
drugs.
others too, Theresa, we've seen.
It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. It's to even see that that's going on is very disappointing. Another point, I know that my 5 minutes is probably almost up, but 2 points real fast. Section 4112 of the Ohio Revised Code is the Civil Rights Commission. That is where the disabled are defined. The last word of Article 1, Section 1 of the Ohio Constitution is safety. So as defined by the Ohio Revised Code and the Ohio Constitution, the disabled are only allowed highly lethal, highly addictive drugs. They are not allowed a safe natural herb. Those highly lethal, highly addictive drugs are also killing their family members. The Ohio Attorney General in his task force meetings around the state is saying between 60 to 80% of heroin overdoses are started with a legal prescription. Well, who's getting these legal prescriptions? The disabled in the state of Ohio. One final, very important point I want to make with you, when I was working with those families, I had them pull their billing so we could understand exactly what was going on. Rainbow Babies told me, an advocate over there told me that 5% of our Medicaid program participants are catastrophically ill children, but they're using approximately 50% of our Medicaid dollars on their care. Now, as a taxpayer, I'm wondering why we are paying $10,000 to Medicaid for a rescue med for these kids, when we could potentially have an Ohio-based cannabis oils program that could potentially reduce our Medicaid costs. The first state that's actually looking at that, I think right now, is Minnesota, but with the Minnesota business model, it's problematic because it's just so expensive. Another important point I'd like to make for you is remember the small business person. If we are able to remember the small business person and licensing, fair and transparent licensing for the small business person, we could potentially implement a medical marijuana regulatory program that is affordable for all patients. So thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you.
No question, let me just a comment. I want to thank you for your words. They're very thoughtful, because we receive testimony from people with personal needs and their conditions, and then we receive testimony from folks like yourself who have actually given deep thought into implementation of the policy. And that's what Senator Yuko and I are going to spend a fair amount of time discussing after today. What is medical? You know, a child with epilepsy, in a wheelchair, that's pretty well defined. I think most people would say that's what I'm thinking when I think medical marijuana. Then we get into nebulous conditions, pain management, headaches, spinal issues. You know, I don't know where to start. And that's something that Senator Yuko and I need to work through. The second thing that I think you bring up that's an incredible point, regardless of condition, is having a consistent product. That's not happening today. And if you're going to treat this like medicine, at least the pharmacist in me says that the physician or the hospital or the caregiver should at least have an idea of what therapy you're getting, not just a general thing. I mean, marijuana, as you know, today comes in all different strains and subsets and everything in between. And we're going to treat children with epilepsy. It's nice to know the Charlotte's Web they're getting at least is a consistent product of a somewhat known strength in my mind. Otherwise, you show up at Children's Hospital, I don't know what you're on. What's in that tube that they send you in the mail?
It's really scary. It's
It
very,
is.
very scary, but you have to ask for guidance.
That, beyond the discussion of marijuana, the first thing that you always take an oath to is do no harm. Well, I don't even know what the child's getting.
It's
And that's
absolutely
what
absurd.
people think when they say medical marijuana. So as we filter out what do people say, what do they mean, that kind of thoughtful approach, I appreciate that, because as you alluded, it's probably not going to make everybody happy. I never get what I want. You, Senator Yuko,
Never.
even my own legislation gets amended and changed. And it's my wife in the house, I'm not perfect. And either are my liberals. So as we work through this issue, thank you for that openness, because that's probably actually what's going to happen if we do something is you'll look at it and you'll say, well, that wasn't in there and I really wanted it. But this is okay because what I want. You have to start somewhere.
And my belief, absolutely, the way to start this, the conservative approach to medical cannabis in the state of Ohio, is to get our healthcare professionals educated immediately with accredited CMEs. Now, Dr. Kasich, first off, I will say that I think he ran on the platform of a small business person, but we'll let that go. But I do also know when he first got into office as a governor, he spent about $7 to $8 million connecting all of our medical schools, our hospital systems, to make sure that they are all connected. So we have a way to potentially get in there, get the Walter Reed CME education, and send it around the state to all of our medical schools in the state of Ohio. This will thrust our doctors into the farther ahead than most other states that have been doing this for a while.
But
So.
you touched on something else too that's important. Unlike the Ohio Constitution, we can always change the law. So the bill is really a starting point. The Ohio Constitution is a limit. You
Well-
can do no more, no less. So
It can
create rights. It can absolutely create rights, and I would not be surprised if you see another group come through who do not put regulation and legislation in an amendment where it doesn't belong, but you might see rights. And in my opinion, when you're looking at the disabled who are defined under the Civil Rights Commission, they have the right to this medicine. And the federal government is withholding these people's rights to this medicine, and it's causing the taxpayers of the state of Ohio to spend a lot more money in taxes, and that's our federal government. And there's, why is that happening? There's something not right here. And for the most used, widely used drug, we've heard for how many years that that's what it is, and we're still not studying it? There's something not right there. So thank you again.
Theresa, one fast question. You mentioned you graduated with a degree in, was it criminal justice? I don't know what your background was, but traditionally those in that field are opposition to what we're trying to do. What is it that you did after you got your degree?
Well, I became a mom, and then after that, I was a
Sometimes
project
you need a
manager.
criminal justice degree.
Yeah. I was a project manager at refineries, and then I was a project manager in the automotive industry. And so this kind of just felt, like I said, I was thrust into this, and I really believe in our Constitution, and I think we need to protect our Constitution.
Absolutely, we
Thank
agree
you.
wholeheartedly. Hey, Mr. Dave, I think we see a mutual friend in the audience. The Honorable former state representative is former state Senator Lynn Watchman. Lynn's straight out there. Lynn served as chairman of the Health Committee forever. All 93 years he served with the state of Ohio. He was always a chairman, always had to keep me in line. I have a feeling I'm sitting here, I'm watching him, I think he's trying to think, okay, when do I gavel him down? Well, welcome, Lynn. Glad to see you here. Appreciate it.